Oh, good. We've got two people. Okay, two people. Your job is to tell me whether or not the audio sounds echoey.
Struggle with our men occurs laterally, across and within our movement. It does not occur vertically between white women and indigenous women on one side and white men and native men on the opposing side. To frame the struggle in terms of gender equity leaves an entire realm of life unaccounted for. In their eagerness to coalesce between lateral women's movement.
Okay, good. So, I guess I will say that this will probably, in terms of like uploading to the kind of archive channel, KC Streams, this will probably be the only video I upload. I won't bother uploading the beginning where I just found out stuff, but it means we won't get as much of an intro, but that's fine. Okay, so we're jumping into this, okay? And I'll just respond to this whole thing again, because I do think it's wild.
Remains universal. Struggle with our men occurs laterally, across and within our movement. It does not occur vertically.
Okay, here's the thing. This seems to imply that, like, it seems to be an implicit denial of the patriarchy itself, right? Because it's saying struggle with men occurs laterally, not vertically. And yeah, between white women and indigenous women and white men and native men on the other side. So that is denying the patriarchy. And that is insane because it's saying that men are not in a privileged, hierarchically kind of higher position than women in society. And that's just denying systemic oppression itself. Like, I genuinely, there is no way to read that other than as a denial of the entire concept of patriarchy. Or if there is, then it needs some additional context to make it sound like something other than that there is no vertical opposition between men and women, when there very clearly is, because men are very clearly within a privileged position of power within a patriarchal society. I actually have to move my guitar because, here's the thing, sometimes when it's in the corner, it's like my voice just, I guess, echoes and somehow ends up like hitting my guitar and makes a noise.
Between white women and indigenous women on one side and white men and native men.
And by the way, Ash, I don't think, like, literally, I think literally what this is saying, I don't think it's saying they can't both be I think it's literally saying that patriarchy doesn't exist. Like, that's the thing, it's not even saying patriarchy and racism can't both be problems. It's saying patriarchy doesn't exist, and that is wild, but that's what it says.
On the opposing side. To frame the struggle in terms of gender equity leaves an entire realm of life unaccounted for.
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean, because, look, you can frame anything in terms of anything. Like, what if you frame... The thing is, here's the problem, okay? The struggle is presented here without any kind of context. So I don't know what the struggle is supposed to mean. But the thing is, if by the struggle we're just supposed to mean, in general, kind of the idea of struggling for equality, well, you can frame it in terms of anything, and you're not necessarily leaving other things unaccounted for because you're not trying to. Like, you can frame things in terms of sexuality equity, wanting gay relationships to be seen as just as valid as straight relationships. And you know what? In doing that, you're not focusing on gender or sex or anything else. But still, that's a fine thing to do. Like, that's the thing. I mean, it's a kind of a meaningless quote, but it seems to just be missing the point that it's entirely okay to focus on one thing, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're saying that other stuff isn't a problem, and you also shouldn't be... I apologize. Let's go on to Do Not Disturb. And that also doesn't mean that... And it's also not reasonable to expect somebody to be able to account for every single thing in their activism. Because if you try and do that, your activism's just going to fail because it's going to become muddied, and I just don't know.
In their eagerness to coalesce, white feminists have been rightly accused of ignoring or eliding differences between and among women. While, like other Indigenous women, I recognize the invaluable contributions that feminists have made, I also believe that their well-documented failure to engage and acknowledge the complicity of white women in the history of domination positions mainstream feminism alongside other colonialist discourses.
Okay, I suppose I should just say the obvious other thing. What the hell does this have to do with gender critical feminism? Gender critical feminism is not only incredibly well populated with a huge number of women, including black women and other non-white women, as I've kind of already mentioned in the previous episode. But there is nothing about like gender critical feminism is pretty much a topic where your opinions on kind of racial issues can be anything within that. Well, not anything, perhaps. Well, I mean, in theory, like ultimately, gender critical feminism is about how it makes sense to understand the categories of man and woman in relation to the concept of gender. It's not about race, and it doesn't have to be about race because not everything has to be. And essentially, this is as me, like literally, this is as dumb as if somebody uh, was making like debunking atheism. Like a Christian makes a video debunking atheism, and they just include a whole load of stuff about how it's bad when people don't put enough focus on race. With, I guess, the implication being that atheism is therefore illegitimate because it doesn't talk about race enough. But the point is, you're probably going to work out where I'm going here. It doesn't need to. It's not a relevant topic. You can be a pro kind of racial equality activist. You can be the blackest of black feminists and be an atheist, and also you can be the blackest of black feminists and be gender critical. There is no contradiction. Like it's literally irrelevant. Oh, whatever.
To put it as simply as possible for the white gender critical people scratching their heads right now, you often say,
What about the non-white gender critical people? Like how are they gonna like what are they gonna do? You're gonna to put like I like the idea of like there's gonna be another section to put it as simply as possible for the non-white gender critical people watching right now. I don't believe you exist, and I'm completely ignorant. There we go. I just thought I'd fill in for Caelan there.
that women are oppressed first and foremost by their sex. Everything is secondary, including race.
Okay, let me be clear about this. One, gender critical people do not have to believe that is true. Gender critical people might believe that's true. And by the way, if they do, so what? That doesn't mean they're denying the relevance of race. Like, I'm guaranteeing there are going to be some, I mean, I already know this, but there are definitely going to be some uh, women who are not white who believe that actually they're principally subject to oppression based on their sex and not their race. Like, if anything, I would say this is mostly going to come down to personal things and going to be quite a difficult thing to draw a judgment on. Like, are people mostly, like, is sex the main reason why all women are oppressed? Well, probably not. Like, there are going to be some women who are more oppressed for other reasons, like class or sexuality or race, of course, or maybe even age and things like that, like or disability. There are going to be many reasons why some women might be oppressed. So actually, then you're just kind of talking about, I guess, like an aggregate. How, in general, are most women oppressed? And at that point, it's a pretty difficult question to answer. And honestly, I think almost any answer should be viewed as potentially legitimate. And it's incredibly bad faith to act as if any answer other than no race is the number one thing that matters is somehow racist. Okay, so I guess that must mean it's misogynistic to say that, right? Because that's the thing. Why is it that it is racist to not put race front and center, but it is not apparently sexist to not put sex front and center? That would be my question. I would genuinely like to hear an answer to that because apparently it's profoundly racist. I mean, that's what the section's called, right? Mask off racism. Apparently, it's racist that there might be some gender critical feminists who think that sex is a more relevant nexus of oppression for most women than race. Apparently, that is racist. So, how is it not sexist for other people to posit that race is a more significant nexus of oppression for the majority of women than sex? I don't understand the inconsistency there.
But that's because you only experience misogyny and not racism. So from your point of view, the one that happens to you must be the worst because you can feel how much it fucking sucks.
I look, I don't think anyone's saying that. Like, who's saying that? I mean, it would be absolutely ridiculous for one a any white feminist. Which again, we're talking about white feminism here, which I just feel like who like that's not gender critical feminism. Like we're talking about white feminism, which is basically an entirely tangential thing. But first of all, I don't think there are many white feminists or any white feminists who are unaware that race is an issue. And I think if they are going to declare that sex is more of an issue than race, then it's probably going to be based on some kind of reasoned consideration of uh, the reality that for some women, race is going to be a bigger issue. Um, I mean, the main issue, really, I think, with kind of feminism having been, I guess, a little bit too centered on the issues of white women in the past is more a matter of a lack of focus on that issue. But I think most, uh, well, again, I would say all feminists really, when called out specifically on issues of race, would probably give answers that are pretty nuanced, pretty intelligent, and pretty legitimate. Even if I wouldn't necessarily agree with them, they're still worth considering. I don't think there's any white feminist who, if you said, "Do you think race is an issue?" they say, "Nah, racism doesn't matter at all." And indeed, of course, none of the quotes that we've got so far from gender critical feminists have suggested that. But again, also, we're talking about white feminists, and white feminists aren't necessarily gender critical feminists, nor vice versa.
But you don't experience racism, you benefit from it. That's how whiteness works. So you'll never be able to feel what it's like to experience it. You have no valid lived experiences to say misogyny is worse than racism when you only have half the picture.
I don't like this implication that you can't learn about stuff even though you don't have direct experiences with it. Um, like at the end of the day, I don't have a direct experience of classism somebody experiences as a working class person because I'm not working class. I also don't have a direct experience of how it feels to be, a victim of racism as a black person. But I can still potentially get some idea of which was. I mean, heck, even just talking about race, for example, I don't know directly how it feels to be a victim of anti-black racism in the UK, nor do I know how it feels to be a victim of anti-Asian racism in the UK. But I think I could probably, if I looked into it and studied it and sought to understand it, get some idea of what might be the kind of more extreme and, if you like, even though I think this kind of language is a bit I guess inappropriate when talking about systemic oppression because it's all bad, but which systemic oppression is worse. So the thing is, you don't have to have directly experienced these things, and it's kind of just dumb to dismiss anything that a white woman might have to say about the relationship between sexism and racism because you haven't directly experienced racism. Because of course, I mean, the fact remains, I mean, I pointed out that I haven't experienced black racism or Asian racism, but also an Asian person hasn't experienced black racism. A black person hasn't experienced or racism against black people. A black person hasn't experienced racism against Asian people. So nobody has experienced everything. So I'm not really sure what the point's supposed to be here. Um, uh, Question: when people say don't listen to Lisa, she's just a white feminist, is that racism? Actual question. Yeah, I mean, so I would say that is yeah, racism. I mean, the thing is, I would say like maybe you could just say it's stupid. I think one of the things about like racism is I would tend to use racism to describe, I guess, some kind of judgment that's kind of like a moral judgment. Whereas I feel like sometimes people are just so stupid that like they actually think like basically it's just idiots who have bought into kind of nonsense identity politics. And I don't know, like I think maybe you could argue that it's more just like nonsense political posturing than actual sincere racism. But I don't know. I mean, that's just me trying to be nuanced. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. I think racism can be both systemic and individual. Um, but yeah, no, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I definitely. I mean, yeah, I've kind of said before that I think the use of white as a way to dismiss women is a way for progressives to be misogynistic. Um, I mean, I actually, so I have a video on my second channel, which I don't really upload to anymore, but it was basically talking about how I think that nowadays you can make a very credible case that all else being equal, white people are likely to have a more rounded understanding of racial issues than black people. And the reason I said that, and I stand by that position, the reason I said it is because most white people are told, at least to some degree, to check their privilege. Most white people are told to consider things from a black person's perspective or an Asian person's perspective. They're encouraged to recognize the limitations of their own personal experience. And my question would be, are black people encouraged to do the same? And my contention would be that I don't think they are. I don't think black people are encouraged to recognize the limits of their own experiences and their own perceptions and their own life experiences. I don't think black people are encouraged to recognize that whatever the experiences they have are going to be limited to their unique situation. So yeah, I mean, I mentioned it one time when the specific context of me mentioning it was talking about like I think it was education reform, and I basically was saying like I feel like a lot of black people, if they were in charge of education reform, would entirely center their own experiences and their own goals, and wouldn't make any effort to accommodate other kind of priorities from different groups. Whereas I feel like white people, if you put a group of white people in charge of kind of curriculum reform, I think they'd be likely to come up with some stuff that's kind of good for everybody and kind of represents everybody, because a lot of them have been encouraged to think like that. But I feel like if you had black people in charge of curriculum reform, I feel like you'd see a lot of stuff that's just like, oh, we need to make sure everyone knows how bad colonialism was, and we need to make sure that we really put a focus on Black History Month and blah blah blah. Like I think they'd really put a focus on that, and a disproportionate focus that's not actually really appropriate. So there we go. Yeah, that is my spicy take.
It's having such a self-centered worldview that you can't even fathom that your worldview isn't accurate. Just because your experiences are real does not make them universal. Your lived experiences are heckin' valid, but they are part of billions of women's lived experiences.
I really okay. Here's the thing. I feel like this is really talking down when you consider the fact that women are going to be aware of there being a dominant narrative that they are to some extent passive victims of. And that's because of patriarchy. Like women will have had some experience of seeing the kind of patriarchal view of things being expressed as the only legitimate point of view, because men do have that systemic power to put their view out as the only view. So women know all of this, and it comes across as very patronizing for this person, Caelan, to be explaining something so bloody obvious. Like, even, I want to stress, obviously I made the point of saying just then that women already know this because they experience this when it comes to men putting their views out there like it's the only valid point of view, and ignoring the fact that women might have different experiences. And even I've been guilty of that in some cases where I've said things and I've thought, well, I don't think this is a really big issue. And now I've had women come along and point out, actually, if I were able to see things from their perspective, I would see that actually is a bigger issue. Even I've done that before, I say, as the best ally ever. But the thing is, even ignoring all of that, this is still so patronizing because it's such an obvious point, and I just can't believe anybody would be so embarrassingly lacking in self-awareness to say to a whole load of people who are necessarily politically conscious enough to have sat down to watch a 5.5 hour video series on trans identity that and yet they wouldn't know that their experiences aren't the only experiences. Like, I mean, genuinely, it's just so patronizing.
What are the odds that in a world with so many people and cultures, so many women with unique lives, that all of their experiences that form their understanding of womanhood are going to align in a way that fits into your pre-existing Western worldview? Seems a little presumptuous. And if you learn that your worldview needs expanding and then you allow it to, great, love that. But for white anti-trans activists to admit this would be to admit that white women themselves are a class, and that they are treated entirely differently than women of color and experience different forms of misogyny, like misogynoir.
White women can oscillate between their gender and
Look, I genuinely am so done with this. Like, it's just so irrelevant. It, like, basically, it's literally, I think this is like what they call it, a bait and switch, right? Where it's kind of like, I'm going to explain how the gender critical view is racist, or that major gender critical personalities are racist. First of all, we haven't got anything about major gender critical personalities, and we also haven't got anything about gender critical points of view, because essentially there was just this kind of moment where gender critical was taken out and white feminism was really quickly swapped in as if the two things are identical. And I'm not saying there's no overlap, but there's that doesn't make them the same thing. And now we're just getting a pretty obvious point of, well, sometimes white people, I mean, it's the obvious point is actually not that, you know, I mean, it's so obvious that it's almost not worth saying. Sometimes white people might not consider the experiences of other races and have kind of blind spots in their understanding of the world. Pretty obvious point. What I guess is making it somewhat more novel is how patronizingly it's being presented, as if like this isn't an obvious point.
their race, between being the oppressed and the oppressor. Women of colour are never permitted to exist outside of these constraints. We are both women and people of colour, and we are always seen and treated as such.
I'm really annoyed because this is literally the exact kind of. I mean, how can Caelan Conrad think this book is good when that's such an obviously stupid thing to say? Because the whole point seems to be, well, women think that just because they're oppressed as women, it therefore follows that they are always oppressed and that they're not ever in positions of privilege and power. But here you're getting functionally the exact same claim. Because women of color are women and are oppressed as women and they're oppressed as people of color, it therefore follows they're oppressed all the time. But that's not true, is it, you absolute moron? Because guess what? A woman who is black, like Beyonce, is, sure, you could say, oppressed as a woman and oppressed as somebody of color, but she is not oppressed as somebody who is decidedly a kind of capitalist businesswoman. She's not oppressed as somebody who is profiting off the labor of the working class in predominantly the global south who work in sweatshops. Hello, Fred Propaganda, channel favorite. I like how I'm getting my own in jokes now. That's good. I think that's what I really wanted out of life. She is also, let's say, for example, I mean, we could talk about Beyonce. I mean, we could talk about anyone else. The majority of women aren't lesbians. The majority of women are straight. And I think we can all agree that there is such a thing as straight privilege. That in terms of systemic oppression, lesbians are going to be systemically oppressed in many ways, while straight people aren't. That heterosexuality is more privileged than homosexuality. So, women of color who are straight are going to be in the privileged class and the oppressive class, in contrast to lesbians. When a conservative traditional values black woman of color, or rather black woman of color is a bit redundant, who's kind of running as the kind of token Republican state senator or something, introduces a law to stop the children learning about same-sex relationships. What is she doing there? But as a straight woman, acting as an oppressor of people who are same-sex attracted. This is the thing. I want to stress this so much. This is really majorly, like, embarrassingly hypocritical and lacking self-awareness. I genuinely can't believe this because I spent so long being like, this is an obvious point. It's obvious that we are all, pretty much all of us. I mean, I guess there are some people who really do luck out on every single point, and to an extent, I mean, I'm almost approaching that. But most people are going to be privileged in some ways and oppressed in others. And it's important not to let our views or our understanding of when we're oppressed override our understanding of when we are, in fact, privileged oppressors, beneficiaries of oppressive systemic discriminations. That would seem to be a really obvious point. And yet, this person, Ruby Hamad, doesn't understand that. This person, Ruby Hamad, again, look at this game. I want to stress this game. Women of color are never permitted to exist outside of these constraints. So there you go. Women of color are never part of the oppressor class as capitalists. Women of color are never part of the oppressor class as heterosexual straight women. This is I'm embarrassed, and sometimes I wonder, like, I don't know, I know my brain's wired differently, such that when I see just blatant contradictions, they really stick out to me. And I'm not sure if I'm fully communicating how much of an obvious contradiction this is, but it is insane. It is insane how much of a contradiction this is. The hypocrisy of literally being like, well, white women are awful because white women don't understand that while they are oppressed as women, they are oppressors in many other ways. And meanwhile, this is somebody saying, well, because I'm a black woman, I'm never the oppressor. Because I'm a black woman, I'm always oppressed. You're literally doing what you're saying white women shouldn't be doing. Just because you're adding one extra thing of race doesn't mean you can ignore sexuality, economic class, disabilities, and things like that. I'm a better annoying intersexual lib than these people, which I kind of already knew. But I mean, goodness me, I'm, my brain just started hurting then. All right, okay, there we go. Are we all clear that this is just insane hypocrisy? This is so far, I mean, this is maybe even, I would genuinely say, the dumbest thing so far in this entire 5.5 hour series. I'm embarrassed.
The view of women as a single class of person implies that discrimination based on sex and gender transcends discrimination based on race. And not only is that implied, it's...
Of course, what we really should recognize is that actually discrimination based on gender in combination with race transcends all other oppressions. Apparently that's perfectly fine to believe.
Outright stated. Careful, this one's a doozy. Do you remember?
No, okay, I don't think it can be more of a doozy than what we just got there from your primary source for this video.
Central Park Karen? Because the gender critical people did. I'm sorry, but in order to talk about this, I need to play the full video. I'm sorry, it's like really fucking ugly to watch.
I've never seen this whole video. Like, I genuinely don't really engage. I'm gonna get some water real quick. I'm quite excited to watch this video because I like cringe content, but usually I'm too much of a coward for it. rock the mic, I rock the mic right. I've got, you've got, we got everybody. You can't get a girl, but your best friend can. It's time to move your body. Do 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 do. Get a witness, every girl, every man. Boom.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
I mean, I just want to say, like, I've always, like, my perception of this video, like, from having watched a little bit of it, has always been that both people seem really, I can't think of a non-ableist way to refer to it, but just, like, very, just weird.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
Like, I don't know. Like, again, I don't care. Like, I don't know anything about the story, but, like, when I first saw this, like, video, like I say, I didn't watch all of it because I was cringing, but I was just like, what's this guy doing? Like, I don't really get it. I don't really get the whole, like, randomly filming people thing.
I'm gonna tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
It's just the whole thing's really weird. What's it? Oh, poor dog. I guess the dog being like, I don't know, whatever. At least she's got a mask. Like, what's happening with the dog? The dog's like freaking out so much. This woman seems crazy. Also, oh no, this is in Central Park, right? Like, surely in New York, everyone's just crazy. I mean, I've seen Taxi Driver.
I'm sorry, I'm in the ramble, and there is a man, African American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog.
I don't know. See, I've been to New York once, right? Okay. I'm not a native to New York, but I just thought, like, you know, when you see crazy people, which I think happens every other block, you just kind of ignore them. Like, I don't know. If someone just walked in and went, there is a crazed British man, and he is threatening my life and threatening my dog, I'd say, okay, bye. I don't know, like, I wouldn't start filming it.
And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately.
I mean, she's crazy, right? And I'm not saying that in, like, the, hey, this dame's crazy. Hey, what's going on here? Or, like, okay, well, let me say this again. Either she is crazy because she's, like, because, like, she's like, this isn't, like, I want to be clear again. I'm sorry. This isn't racism. Like, this is not racism. This is, okay, well, okay, let me say this. So either this guy actually did something genuinely threatening. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So someone's saying, show the whole, because I was going to say it's okay. I'll say this now because I'm seeing people saying this. Either there is actually some context that means how she is behaving right now is reasonable, which I don't know about, and, you know, I'd kind of be interested in actually kind of seeing that. But either that, or, which, you know, I realize maybe this isn't the case, but, like, or he literally is just there hanging out with his phone, doing nothing, not doing anything remotely threatening, in which case her reaction is so over the top and ridiculous that, like I say, it doesn't really even qualify as racism. It's just crazy. Like, it's like, I feel like there's a point at which it's kind of like, I don't know, like, I remember there was like a time, I feel like I remember this story about, like, some guy who was clearly, like, kind of mentally disturbed, like, started saying, like, shouting racial slurs, and then some, like, black people started attacking him and beating him up. And it's like, I'm sorry, but at that point, you're not on, like, some kind of moral crusade against racism. You're just beating up, I would say innocent, honestly, because if they're that mentally disturbed, like, it was clearly somebody who was just crazy. And it's like, you're not being a hero by beating that person up. You're just beating up a crazy person. And, like, yeah, I don't know, like, to me, so, like, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. If this is literally, like, genuinely this is the context, just, like, he's just standing there doing nothing, then that's not even racism. It's just her being crazy. But yeah, people are saying that there's actually context. So maybe I'll try and look into the context.
I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
Here's the thing.
Was that it?
When it comes to gender critical ideology, white women are not allowed to be seen as anything but a victim unless they've come out against gender critical ideology.
It is one of the goals of Black Lives Matter to destroy the family unit.
Because while they say hate has no home here, the one hatred that is agreed upon across all cultures as acceptable is the hatred of women, because people care more about racism than sexism, and especially misogyny.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily wrong with that statement. I definitely agree with the claim that the one hatred that is agreed upon across all cultures is the hatred of women. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why there's anything wrong with that quote. It seems very reasonable to me.
People can at least see racial injustice. Misogyny is so normal it's invisible. Black men are capable of raping and are socialized to do so, and control of attempt to control all women, the biosphere, and everything else they can get their hands on. Note that you had to ask this question in a woman-friendly, safe space, because it isn't safe to even ask this question in the male stream.
So there we go. Okay, another completely reasonable comment. It's basically just saying quite a standard feminist talking point that men within patriarchal society are socialized to disrespect women's boundaries, and ultimately that can even extend to sexual assault. Literally just a feminist quote, and the reason why I would assume, in context, black men are being mentioned is because, like, it's pointing out, hey, black men can also be perpetuators of misogyny. Like, yes, as a white dude, I have been, to some extent, obviously I would like to think I've done a pretty good job at overcoming this socialization, but I have been, to some extent, socialized to undermine women's boundaries and things like that, and to see women's boundaries as not necessarily entirely legitimate through, you know, like a variety of different kind of cultural conditionings. You know, obviously, you know, I mean, like a lot of the media directed at children will show men doing kind of unconsensual things. A lot of like comedies will show men doing unconsensual things as a joke. Yes, teenage Michael, and honestly, still present day Michael, but with a sense of, you know, being aware of the problematic elements, still really enjoys the American Pie films. But like when I was a kid, I just watched the American Pie films and found them funny, just in general. But yeah, the point is that men are socialized in that way, and also are capable, and just as a white man is, so is a black man. I really don't see what the issue is.
This is why gender critical people will twist themselves into a knot to defend even obviously abhorrent people. Because if white women are always the victim, then the majority of the people in these groups are also always the victim. It's very convenient.
Yes, people were saying she'd called the police just because she was racist, as if she'd come across a black man and was calling police solely because she wanted to see him get killed. As if, and this was assumed by many, when the police show up to a scene where a white woman has called them and there's a black man there, the police should be presumed to act like some sort of hit squad on behalf of any white woman with a complaint. It was astounding to see people making comment after comment that could only make sense if you did believe that police instantly kill all black men when they're present at the scene when responding to a 911 call. Of course, there are millions of police contacts with citizens daily, many of them with black men, and the police definitely do not just gun down every...
Some might say disproportionately. I'm not saying there are reasons for that. I'm just being a little bit cheeky.
black man they come across. There are obviously problems with inappropriate use of force, but that is not an even vaguely accurate representation of any of them.
Yeah, I mean, like, that statement, I mean, it's kind of incredibly boring, and I'm not necessarily even going to include it. It's basically saying, yeah, it's not as if, like, every single time the police show up, a black person is definitely going to die. That would be ridiculous. So yeah, it's like, if anything, I don't really have much to say about it because it's just a kind of boringly obvious point. I'm gonna, I suppose I should, how do I get this up? Oh, okay, so it's gonna go like that. Okay, I'll look into this in a second.
There's a key part of this video that every single person in these comments refused to address. Feeling threatened and someone threatening to kill you are not the same thing. Further, she outright states to him, I'm going to call the police and tell them an African American man is threatening my life. Why, pray tell him that she's going to highlight his race to the cops. She's not giving a description to the police when she says that, she's talking to him.
I'm gonna tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
It was an actual threat. If anyone's life was actually threatened, he has a stronger case. Not only that, but she's following him and he's retreating, telling her to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please.
Okay, I'm sorry. Like, this is a really minor point, but he's literally not retreating. Like, he's not. He's standing still, which is fine. You can, like, you could have said that. I just don't know why you would lie. I suppose, seeing as I think, just for fun, I'll probably include this in the edited version. I'm just going to say this whole thing has been about the Central Park Karen, which again, I don't really agree with that term, but that's the word by which she was referred. Honestly, I think that I'm not going to include any of it apart from this bit now in the edited version. So I'm just going to say that thus far, nothing relevant has been said. I think it's just trying to argue that this woman was bad and racist, and to, for some reason, associate her with the gender critical movement. Thus far, we haven't got any substantial reason to view her as associated with the gender critical movement. And indeed, I mean, I am getting people in the comments saying that there is more context to this. For the record, I don't know anything about it. So it's something I might look into soon, and, you know, maybe even by the end of this stream, see what I think. But thus far, nothing substantial has been said. There are some people saying that the video presented is taking things out of context and not representing the full story. I think that could be very credible. But either way, I mean, it's irrelevant to the ultimate question of the gender critical movement.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't
And also, yeah, he's not retreating. Just want to remind everyone of that.
come close to me.
So when I read the comment,
And okay, this isn't going into it, but he could have retreated. You know who was retreating? This guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, called Kyle Rittenhouse.
I was fucking gobsmacked.
I would actually like to see this in terms of like Caelan Conrad, but just instead it was like defending Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't think Caelan would ever do that. Just like, he was retreating and they were chasing him. Like, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm to be fair, like, I'm consistent about this. You know what? If that guy had a gun and this woman was chasing him through the street, then he would be entitled to shoot her. Because that, I feel like, is a pretty legitimate rule to go by. Don't chase people down in the street when they have a lethal weapon. That's my take.
At how disingenuous and downright ignorant almost every single gender critical person was. They really could not even for a second comprehend that a white woman had any power over a black man at all. Now, I tried my best not to get involved in discussions, but this one was so unbelievably f***ed up that I had to, and I fully broke my don't act like Caelan rule when I got into an argument with Kelly J.
I read man before black and woman before white. It helped.
So race is secondary, do you think? Still trying to learn all this social levels stuff.
I think misogyny kills more than racism.
That's a very legitimate take. And then, I don't know, so for some reason then Caelan says, I am still confused on this situation, but thank you for trying. Does that not just... I feel like you could slap that on. Like, that should be Caelan's legitimate response to every single thing. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like, I would... Oh, yeah, whatever.
Oh, I am still confused on the situation, but thank you for trying.
For me, I saw the power dynamic as one where the woman was in the more vulnerable position.
I see. That part makes sense to me. But why did she lie and say he was threatening her life?
What are you expecting from me? A lone woman was told by a man that she wouldn't like what he was going to do. Past that, I genuinely don't care what she said to get herself out of danger.
And she wasn't saying he was African American just to police. She said it to him. She said, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life. Exactly those words. Why would she say that to him? He knows he is African American. It is very obvious what she is saying and why. I usually agree with this group, but this is just lies. I thought we were about reality being reality. A lot are saying, I would have thought he was trying to hurt my dog too. Okay, that is fair. But that is also not a threat to her life. Why not say I think he is threatening my dog? Why lie?
Okay,
I am unashamed in centering women and understanding the threat of male violence above everything. You seem to be on the side of the threatening man. 'Twas ever thus.
Not Dollarama Marilyn Monroe saying 'twas ever thus during a Facebook argument, please. Her entire argument is that her life was threatened by this guy implying he was going to take her dog out of the no-leash area using a dog treat. To claim that she was threatened, even
I wasn't paying attention.
though she stuck around for minutes later, strangling her fucking dog, going after him physically, and refusing to leave. There's no way to defend that this woman was terrified without ignoring and obfuscating facts and outright lying. It's so bitterly... Is it a bug? Oh, no. Okay. It's so bitterly fucking obvious that these white people literally look at this...
I'm gonna tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
There is an African American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately.
And actually see a victim in fear. Like they see that and believe it. Is that...
I mean, okay, maybe I'm crazy. She seems pretty scared to me. Like, and again, this is where I go back to the thing of like, if she genuinely has no reason to be scared, then I think she's just basically crazy. And if she does have a reason to be scared, then whatever. But the point is, no matter what, I don't really think you can categorize her as racist, because it seems like she's just, again, if, which again, I do need to look into this, but if there is no reason for her to be scared and she is acting that scared, then something's up. And it's not, I don't think, her racism. I think it's that she probably needs some kind of counseling.
Because they see this behavior in their own sisterhood of white victimhood. In gender critical ideology, it's Central Park Karen who's the victim of racist profiling, seeing that Karen among these women has become a slur against white women. They claim...
I mean, Karen is a slur. Yeah, like, I don't know. Okay, so I might look into the story here. Okay, so just because, you know, I got it. Like, here I am, like, being a stupid fat man, being like, oh, well, maybe if this happened, maybe if that happened, blah, 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 blah. Central Park. What should I... Okay, I can read the thing that people said I should check out. I'll do that. But if there's something else people think I should watch, I'll watch that because I'm interested. But so yeah, either put up or shut up. No, I'm joking. Either, yeah, let me know what you think I should watch, or else I'll just read the article. I'm very hiccupy. Okay. Can I close all my tabs? Yeah, why not? Right. So this is so this is a podcast, okay? Oh, this is long.
Last year, on May 25th, a cell phone video was shot in New York City's Central Park. In the video, you see a woman.
I don't know if I can.
Last year, on May 20th.
I didn't mean to do that. I wish there was a way to watch it slightly fast. I know some people don't like me watching things fast, but whatever. So who is Barry Weiss? Is it like Barry White? But my darling, I can't get enough of your love. Barry Weiss. Okay. Oh, Die Welt. Yeah, does anyone have something a bit more uh concentrated? I don't know. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it doesn't really matter. I'm just interested because, like, I mean, genuinely, I kind of ignored it. But my take on it was always like pretty much what I literally said there. Of like, I was like, well, it seems like she either was mentally not in a good place, and that's why she reacted really over the top, or else there was some context missing. The guy, like, I genuinely would agree with the characterization of the guy as basically a dickhead. Like the way he's kind of just standing there, like he could have left. Like that's the thing. He didn't retreat. He fell short of the Kyle Rittenhouse standard. um, like he could have walked away. He chose not to. I don't see the guy, like I definitely don't see the guy as a victim in this. I don't see the guy filming a woman who just clearly doesn't want him there, is uncomfortable with his presence there, doesn't want to be filmed. Um, it just seems so. Yeah, like I'll say that. Like regardless of my opinion on the woman, I have no enthusiasm for the behavior of the guy whatsoever. Seems like he's being kind of a dickhead. Megan Murphy. Yeah, I don't know. Why can't I find? I Google. Wait. Okay. So Megan Murphy. Okay. Would she have called the Central Park Karen? Okay. So there's an article by Megan Murphy. Um. Oh, and Spiked. Spiked does good stuff. Like I love Spiked. Okay. So yeah, here you go. Okay, so the Karen Becky meme has officially gone too far. How the Yeah. Today, yet another Karen video went viral online. This time, it seems a woman flipped off a male driver and then followed her home. Sorry, who then followed her home and filmed her as she melted down into hysterics, posting the video online, which included her home address and license plate. Over 8 million views. Like, that's saying, fuck these dudes. Like, genuinely, like, I don't care if a woman was mean to you. You don't fucking threaten them and film them when they don't want. Like, that's the thing. Like, genuinely, if a woman tells me to fuck off, even if she doesn't have a good reason, you know, one time, um, one time I was at a club and I thought a woman was trying to talk to me. Um, so I walked over to her because I genuinely like thought she was trying to get my attention, and then I leaned in. And I was like, "Did you try and talk to me?" And she went, "No, fuck off, no, fuck off." And I was just like, "Okay, sorry," and I walked away. I don't know. I just thought it was a funny story about one time when someone told me to fuck off. But no, like the thing is, I mean, obviously in that case, like it was just a misunderstanding. But the thing is, like, even if a woman was being like really mean and aggressive, even if a dude was doing it, like, why film someone being antagonistic like that? Um, I don't know. It's just okay, whatever. Um, it seems this is a hobby for Dillard, who has posted other similarly antagonistic videos. I could be putting this on the actual wait. Okay, I tried. I'm gonna put this. Oh, goodness me, I'm screwing everything up. Okay. So if I do this, and then like might as well actually just look at it together. Okay. It seems this is a hobby for Dillard, who is more like Dullard, who has posted other similarly antagonistic videos, accusing women of racism despite no evidence of racism, and attempts to turn Karen virality into profit. Other t-shirts found on his Instagram profile include one with the words "Karen, are you okay?" and another reading "Keep that same energy, Karen." The Karen meme has been misogynistic from the get-go, originating from an anonymous male Reddit user, who was angry at his ex-wife named Karen for taking custody of his children. In 2017, his misogynistic rants became a subreddit. Recently, the meaning of Karen was said to refer specifically to middle-class, middle-aged white women who are so entitled they asked to speak to the manager when perturbed, but has since morphed into a specifically racist white woman who weaponizes white female fragility against largely black men. This connects to sexist tropes that claim women use their emotions, vulnerability, and tears to manipulate men. Yeah, I would agree with that. As in, I would agree that this is a sexist trope, not I would disagree with the sexist trope itself. What began as a joke has become more than that and has moved into explicitly misogynist and, in my opinion, dangerous territory. Becky, which originated as a means to refer to basic white women, probably young, probably blonde, probably not working class, like Karen, I never found this to be particularly offensive, as I had little desire to defend boring people who love Starbucks, but what was once a joke has become something much more egregious. Following someone to their home, doxing, filming. Okay. Moreover, these viral videos, like the Amy Cooper, Christian Cooper, bird watching dog off leash incident, are always decontextualized. No one really knows what happened preceding the video, nor do they know why every party reacted the way they did. We all know social media leaves little room for nuance. The truth is that today, people's lives can be destroyed in an instant via a viral post, and our culture is wielding people very little can. Am I crazy, or is that okay? This is long. Like, I'm not saying, okay, I'm not against that. Like, people can write long things if they like, but I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit shorter. One white woman. Yeah, okay. So I mean, it's kind of thing. So what happens if I click this? Oh, I don't know about that. All right. What are people saying? Sorry, I wasn't looking at the screen. I didn't think Becky was a femcel. I know there's a song by H and some other people. I must admit that I am a racist because H is the only white person, and I don't know any of the names of the other people, called Keisha Becky, which I think is supposed to be essentially, like, my understanding of it, and I'm not an expert on the grime scene, but my understanding of it is that I think it's supposed to be suggesting an affinity for women of both races, with the implication being that Keisha would be a black woman and Becky would be a white woman. So the song's called Keisha Becky because it's like, oh, I don't mind if she's a Keisha or a Becky. I'm not sure if like the Keisha thing is anything like a meme or if it's just solely within the context of that song. But there we go. So whenever I hear Becky, I just think, oh, like, you know, a white woman. Okay. Overall, so wait, what was the name of the woman? I literally forgot her name. Okay, so the name is Amy Schumer? No, Amy Cooper / Christian Cooper. So what? Who's Christian Cooper? I'm so confused. Oh, whatever. I think we've reached the. No, okay, so I think one of them. So wait, did they both have the same surname? If you're going to do what you want to do, then I'm going to do what I want to do, but you're not going to like it. That's a bit weird. Listen to the podcast offline. Yeah, you know what? I will. It'll be like a little book report.
The real issue in this situation is misogyny. That if a white woman claims to be afraid of a black man, she has license to do whatever it is she wishes. Kelly J spelled this out herself.
I don't think anyone says that a woman has a license to do whatever she wants if she's scared of a black man. I think the point is that you have to bear in mind the context of male violence against women being a reality and consider that when literally, I mean, you spent so long being like, you got to consider things from other people's perspective when you're talking about how like white women need to think about black people's experiences more, but now you're totally unwilling to think about the perspective of a woman who knows that all biological males present a potentially serious threat to her. Women are murdered all the time by males. Women are sexually assaulted by males all the time. It's just ridiculous.
She doesn't care that white women have felt threatened.
Oh, the Amy Cooper case is different. Okay.
By men of color who have done nothing to them except not be white in their presence. That white women have had black men killed for them.
I mean, first of all, it's worth saying this guy did not do nothing other than not be white. Like, it seems like, I mean, literally, he at least filmed her. Like, we know that just based on the context of the video.
That she doesn't consider the history of white women abusing, killing, and owning black men relevant. She doesn't care. The only thing that matters is this white woman's feelings. Because when you say you place sex over race, you deny the reality that white women in society do have power over black men. Simply because...
I don't know who Christian Cooper is. Who's Christian Cooper? Who the hell is Christian Cooper? Oh, Central Park birdwatching incident. Oh, here it is, yeah. Between Amy Cooper, a white woman walking her dog, and Christian Cooper, no relation. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. So he has his own Wikipedia page. Oh, wow, I'm glad he managed to profit off it. A black man who was birdwatching in a section of New York City central town known as the Ramble. Amy Cooper's dog was unleashed in the Ramble, an area where leashing is required. She allegedly refused Christian Cooper's request that her dog be leashed. When Christian beckoned the dog towards him with a dog treat, Amy yelled, "Don't you touch my dog." Christian started recording Amy, who placed a call to 911 telling them, "There is an African-American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. Please send the cops immediately." By the time New York City Police Department officers responded, both parties had left. The incident received wide publicity when a video of part of the incident went viral in the hours following the event. On July 6, 2020, the Manhattan announced that Amy Cooper had been charged with filing a false police report, a misdemeanor with a penalty of up to 1 year in jail. She was arraigned? I would assume that's how it's pronounced. On October 14th, the charges against her were dropped in February 2021 after she completed an educational course. And then, yes, I mentioned this again. I was kind of looking at your action. I wanted to see like how it's set up from like both their perspectives. On morning, a woman named Amy Cooper was walking a dog in the area of Central Park known as the Ramble. Blah blah. Spider kind of dogs. Yeah, so by his own account, Christian then said, "Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it," and beckoned the dog towards him with a dog treat. Amy then yelled, "Don't you touch my dog." Christian then began recording on his cell phone. That is pretty sketchy behavior, right? Like doing those two things in that order, saying like, "I'm gonna do what I want, but you're not gonna like it," and then like trying to feed the dog a treat. Also, apparently there's a Wikipedia, like for the dog treat, there's a Wikipedia link. It's like, oh, I'm glad I got a Wikipedia for dog treats. Yeah, okay. And then you get the whole. All right. Uh, um. Oh, see. Invasive commentary. Okay, whatever. Oh yeah, so it actually mentions the August 3rd, 2021 episode of the podcast Honestly with Barry Weiss, entitled The Real Story of the Central Park Karen, described the incident and suggested that the original media reports were biased against Amy Cooper. On the podcast, Amy claimed that Christian's actions had made her feel threatened, saying, "I don't know that as a woman alone in a park that I had another option other than calling 911. She also said she had received death threats from his docs, causing her to feel suicidal and forcing her to leave the United States. In 2018, legislation was okay. All right, okay, we've really got to make some progress, okay. Um, uh, the Megan Murphy article is referring to Carlos Dillard. Yeah, okay.
Because it doesn't align with your
Am I allowed to say that the US is, okay, get this, smelly?
childish worldview that comes down to the power is held by who is physically stronger, as if white slave-owning women didn't frequently rape black men, as if a racist police force coming to save a white woman from a black man threatening to kill her doesn't tip the fucking scales of physical power anyways.
You can hear the hollowness.
Doesn't tip the fucking scales of physical power anyways.
Yeah, there's nothing in there.
To believe their worldview requires that you pretend that white supremacy and settler colonialism only
It echoes. Just like you can hear it echoing for the rest of the video.
benefit white men. And to go even further and claim not only did Central Park Karen do nothing wrong, but that she was the victim. This archetype of the perpetual victim that gender-critical women uphold is an archetype Ruby Hamad refers to as the damsel.
The damsel can only be white. Only white women were considered
Can only be white.
worthy of protecting because only white women can ensure the continuation of a pure white race. Black women, indigenous women, native women, all colonized women were similarly regarded as lacking in innocence because their bodies were already freely, openly, and liberally transgressed by white men.
What about Jasmine in Aladdin? You know how she's like trapped in that giant sand turner? She's a damsel in that, right? She's not white.
White women could achieve acceptance by behaving in certain ways.
What about Sinbad's babe in Sinbad? You know, in the 1950s one where she gets captured by that sorcerer, and then Sinbad has to kill the Cyclops. She was Arab, right? Sinbad. We need to fight for this racial equality. I think that we need to recognize that non-white women can be damsels. Although weirdly, the only two examples I could think of were Arabs, and let's be honest, they're basically white.
Or pretending to. Racialized women, however, were doomed no matter what they said or did. When white
I like that comment. He's just throwing out examples and quotes in hopes of confusing people into agreeing. Like, that's it. Like, again, this is an example of, I mean, as has been the case a lot of the time, I could just sit here saying nothing and it wouldn't matter because none of this is actually relevant. It's all, like, it's shockingly irrelevant. Staggeringly irrelevant. I mean, I guess, like, what? The worst thing we've got is that some gender-critical people have argued that the Central Park Karen, as she is referred to. Amy Cooper is her actual name, although maybe I shouldn't say. I guess everyone knows her actual name. I was just thinking, is it appropriate? But you know what? Everyone knows her name. No, you know what? I'll be good. I'll say Amy. You know, why? You don't need to say her full name. Amy, as is her actual name, was to some degree unfairly maligned and that it was actually quite legitimate, considering the history of male violence against women, for a woman to be concerned about a man acting in a way that she perceived to be threatening. That seems to be the response. And, you know, again, might I 100% agree with all that? Maybe not. Again, obviously, a lot of the context for the incident is missing, but either way, it's really just not very relevant.
White women invoke the damsel, they resurrect this bloody estuary. This is what makes white women's tears so damaging, and yes,
they are also not real people in real life. This is not representation in media we are talking about. You know what? I'm going to pretend I didn't see that.
So violent when they are turned against people of colour, and especially, as is increasingly often the case these days, against women of colour.
But Kelly J says it's okay to lie to the police. Not only that,
I mean, it is okay to lie to the police. I'm going to come out on record and say right now, it is 100% okay to lie to the police.
It's okay to do anything you want if you're a woman who is afraid, regardless of whether that fear is valid. I wonder if her need to reduce everything down to its least nuanced explanation is due to her inability to think beyond that.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. How is the position of, well, we need to consider the reality of like the history of male violence against women when looking at this case, and consider, you know, that actually maybe it was inappropriate of this man to be behaving this way. How is that less nuanced than, no, one of them was entirely the completely innocent victim and the other one was the evil person who wanted to murder them? Like, I'm sorry, why? I feel like Caelan just is playing this on difficult mode by needlessly saying really stupid things. Like, how is... I just don't understand. Like, you don't have the nuanced take here.
Or if it's simply because she finds dog whistles such an effective...
Oh, dog whistles, appropriate.
...strategy. The less words you say, the less words people can use against you. I mean, either way, it works for her. It works on the people she's selling her ugly-ass merch to, people who also find nuance to be nothing but a nuisance. Just basing your entire ideology on surface-level claims like, I think misogyny...
Is Posey Parker's merch ugly? Like, I would just think, like, I don't know. Like, I haven't seen her merch, but I would just think, how is it ugly? Like, you know, what about it is ugly? I would like to see Caelan really kind of get into that, because I'm sat there wondering, like, is her merch ugly? Because I would kind of think it's probably just like, usually, like, most merch surely is just like a standard kind of t-shirt, mugs, just like standard kind of things with just like some kind of message on them. I want to know how ugly this merch is.
Kills more than racism, as if even if that were quantifiable, who dies more would somehow also tell the intricate story that is how their lives were lived and affected by each other. You know, reality, not lived in a vacuum. And when the bodies of thousands of Indigenous children from abusive residential schools were exhumed in Canada, Megan Murphy took the time to write a post about how she disliked how the media was framing the situation, lamenting about how most people wanted to celebrate Canada Day, but the Prime Minister bowed down to hashtags that condemned celebrating a country that would do this. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau.
Okay, I'm not even going to look at the quote, but basically, it seems like essentially it's saying, well, look, you know, Canada Day, there are things about every country to like. I don't think it's unacceptable for Canadians to celebrate their country, just like I think it's entirely acceptable for Chinese people, or Russians, or British people, or Ugandans, or whoever else, the French even. They can have a go. I'm sure they could find something in there to celebrate their country. The thing is, like, so the point being made is, oh, you know, it's kind of disappointing, therefore, that this media fanfare is happening just at a time when, you know, people are trying to do something quite legitimate, which is celebrate their country, and it just so happens that now we all have to talk about how actually the country is awful, and it's just a little bit tiresome. I really don't see that as a, and I'm assuming that's roughly going to be what the quote is based on kind of how it was introduced. And yeah, like I don't think Meghan Murphy is saying Canada did nothing wrong, or that the kind of anti-humanitarian crimes in Canada's past aren't worth taking seriously. Just saying, oh, you know, it's kind of upsetting, disappointing, a bit kind of sort of lame virtue signaling for the media to trot out this story about how, oh, Canada's terrible, just when you actually get around to Canada Day.
Whose father was PM during the time the residential schools operated, suggested the country think of those for whom it's not yet a day of celebration. Of course, celebration and consideration are not mutually exclusive. And despite the fact that the majority of Canadians wanted to celebrate on July 1st, hashtag Cancel Canada Day trending on Twitter was enough for these politicians.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a legitimate point.
I'm sorry you had to pretend to feel bad about having a barbecue in a country you aren't even proud to be part of.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
That must be super difficult for you.
Wait, what? Meghan Murphy's not proud to be Canadian? Who said that? I'm so confused. I'm so confused by everything. What is Caelan saying?
In her comments were conspiracy theories about the situation, most notably that this is an attack on Christianity itself. Meghan herself liked this.
True, but I question the timing of the discovery of these children's bodies. At a time when Christianity is being attacked, I think it's much too convenient that we suddenly found their bodies when we've known for decades that this kind of thing was happening. What is the purpose of finding their bodies now? Get rid of Christianity? Institute globalization as we begin to hate on our...
Okay, I mean, I would agree this is pretty wild and pretty conspiratorial. Like, the Canada Day thing was kind of, you know, whatever, because that's like a specific day. But, I mean, Christianity has been declining in the West for a while, so there's pretty much no time that you could discover something that would cast Christianity in a negative light without it, I guess, being conveniently timed as in terms of hastening the decline of Christianity in the West. So it's just a bit of a weird take. But the thing is, you may notice this is still pretty damn irrelevant to the gender critical point of view. I mean, I guess the most relevant it is that Meghan Murphy is a somebody who presents the gender critical argument. She really isn't like the most, I guess, I mean, you know, there are many other gender critical people, but she is one of them. She is a gender critical person and she's somewhat prominent. And I guess, based on that, you could say, well, you know, isn't it kind of bad that she tweets something or, you know, liked something? Sorry, she didn't tweet this. She liked it when it's kind of conspiratorial and seems to be minimizing the significance of these like crimes against humanity by suggesting it's just part of some ploy to, you know, hurt Christianity. Yeah, sure. That's not great. I wouldn't personally like a tweet like that myself, but you know, whatever. You can see this really is pretty tangential to, and see, the thing is, okay, this is okay. And if the entire part on like mask off racism had been about this caliber, I mean, really, this is kind of the minimum, because this isn't really racism, but whatever. But you know, it's at least showing some kind of lack of consideration for, you know, like other kind of groups' issues. If the entire section had been this kind of caliber, that might have been okay. And you know what, I could genuinely say, all right, fair enough. But the thing is, this is the closest we've got. A gender critical personality who is quite prominent, liking something that is arguably correctly characterized as a racist talking point. That's the best we've got. And that's so far all we've got. Which is, you know, not great. It's pretty insubstantial when you think about it.
Our own country?
Gender critical people get accused of being racist a lot. I wonder why.
I wonder why. It's probably because of this one tweet or whatever, Facebook post or something nobody's ever heard of that Megan Murphy liked. Yeah, definitely.
What I'm coming from, though, I'm being honest now, is it's hate.
Oh, so this is, hold a minute, this is the time when the BLM people like interrupted a gender critical meeting, right? I feel like I remember this because it was a gender critical meeting and some BLM people just showed up and kind of started arguing with them. I mean, I'll see what's shown in the video, but I know about this story and it does not present the gender critical people in a bad light.
Yeah, I'm saying hate. Wait. Well, I'm saying misogyny. I'm saying misogyny.
I can barely hear anything. Come on, subtitles, please.
You can't. My issue is that as you as a woman as well, as you as well, who has faced oppression, I don't understand how you can oppress another marginalized community. That's my point.
Men are not oppressed.
I'm having a conversation. We're not talking about men. You as women are oppressed. That's not. Women have been oppressed, and you are now on the basis of what? On the basis of what? On the basis of what, mate? On the basis of what?
Okay, so far, this is just a black woman arguing with some gender critical people, not even about race. It's quite difficult to hear because there's quite like a cacophony of sound, but basically, the black woman is saying, hey, you're marginalizing trans-identified people and you're being bad to trans-identified people, and that's bad. And Posey Parker is basically just making these standard kind of gender critical objections. So I'm sorry, but this kind of feels racist of Caelan, right? Caelan seems to be suggesting here that arguing with a black person makes you racist. And that seems to be implying that like black people aren't their own people with kind of thoughts and feelings and agency that they should be expected to defend. And that actually, if you do a black person the courtesy of engaging with them in a discussion, you are being racist. Like, that is a horrifyingly racist point of view to have. So if a black person says something and I disagree and we get into an argument, I'm racist unless, okay, because so far I've played this for a while and that's what's happened. Unless Posey Parker or Venice Allen is about to say something actually racist, so far we've got nothing. We've just got a black person arguing with a gender critical person. And it is genuinely worrying to me that Caelan thinks that you shouldn't be allowed to argue with black people or else you're racist.
Clarify! Listen, Don't worship your penis!
That's not racist. Gender critical thought leader Venice Allen yelling, "Go wash your penis" at black women for supporting trans rights. That's not racist. I'm so confused. How is that racist? Oh yeah, we all know the classic racial slur, "Go wash your penis." Goodness me.
But in response to being accused of racism, how do gender critical
this is wild. So that was it. The evidence of gender critical racism so far, yes, is okay. The best thing so far is Megan Murphy liked a tweet that suggested that genuine concerns about the deaths of Indigenous Canadians, First Nations children in Canada was actually some kind of anti-Christian conspiracy theory, which, okay, that's not great. I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to defend that. That's the best case so far. Coming in second, in a strong second, is one time gender critical people argued with some black people. Oh, no. What racism. And then also, I guess, said an admittedly kind of childish sounding insult at them. But again, if you insult a black person, that's not racism. If I walk up to a black person and say, "Hey, you're ugly," I mean, I don't know. Like, the thing is, admittedly, I can't think of a good example because I guess you could almost interpret anything as a racist if you wanted to. Like, if I said, because I was going to say, like, smelly, because I feel like that's a very childish insult, but I know there is, like, an idea of accusing certain races of smelling. So, whatever. I mean, this isn't going the end. But yeah, I mean, just an isolated insult on its own, directed at somebody, is not necessarily like if somebody insults me, that doesn't mean they're being racist against me because I'm white. And likewise, if I insult a black person, that doesn't mean I'm being racist against them because they're black.
People in the group respond. And of course they aren't. They aren't that racist because when they want to see slurs, they have to go to 4chan. Or that they couldn't possibly be racist because they have family members that are people of color.
Look, okay, here's the thing. The whole I've got a family member who is black or whatever is obviously silly. But the thing is, the point is, it's kind of a legitimate thing to say in a context where the claims of racism against you are so farcical. That's the thing. Like, obviously, if you say something seriously, genuinely racist, and then you say, oh, but my best friend's black, well, that's kind of dumb. But conversely, if somebody accuses you of being racist because you argued with a black person, which would be, admittedly, I can't think of anyone who would be so stupid as to claim that that makes you racist. But yeah, if somebody says, hey, you argued with a black person, that makes you racist. Well, considering how laughable and farcical that accusation is, I think at that point you could just dismiss it by saying, oh yeah, sure, I'll go tell my black husband I'm racist. Because that's the thing. It's like saying, oh, I've got a black husband, I've got a black friend, I've got, whatever, or of course, any other kind of race. But it's obviously not a good counter, but it's perfectly functional as a counter to an accusation that isn't convincing in the first place,
And outside of the group on Twitter, where it's not mostly white.
I kind of like how it's like so the response is like this is presenting like this is how gender critical people react when they're called racist. And meanwhile, you have here an actual reaction to how a gender critical person reacts to being called racist, which is principally, what the hell is this? This has nothing to do with gender critical ideology. That's been my reaction to most of what's been said, followed by a few moments where it's got kind of close and said, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. And then of course, that's it. I mean, I did that at one point, but whatever.
White women.
Just a reminder that TERFs and gender criticals are white supremacists who've co-opted feminism to mask their bigotry.
Of course, to say that gender critical ideology upholds standards of white supremacy in the West is not saying that there are no people of color in the movement. There are women who fight against women's rights. There are closeted gays who become anti-gay leaders. And there are indeed people of color who uphold white supremacy through their ideological beliefs. When women of color who don't agree with gender critical ideology say this online, though, they get dogpiled. Accusations that Roslyn, a cis queer feminist and advocate for trans rights, may secretly be a man. After all, a real woman wouldn't disagree with gender critical ideology. A real woman wouldn't be calling the ideology racist. Calls for Roslyn to be locked up for her opinions, saying this Filipino Canadian sounds white, accusing a survivor and anti-rape activist of being a filthy rape apologist. In defense of this,
Caelan, you literally just pointed out that people who are part of marginalized groups can still be engaged in activism against the marginalized groups to which they belong. You just went on a whole thing about how, and I didn't include it because it was irrelevant, but you went on a whole thing about how people of color can still support and uphold ideas that perpetuate white supremacy. But then you just said, well, this person can't be a rape apologist because they're a rape survivor. I don't know what to do. How does this happen every single time? Like, how many times so far in this series has Caelan just totally contradicted a point? And not even like literally, it's not even like, oh, towards the end, points that were made earlier on are being contradicted. It's not like the kind of philosophy tube thing where the whole video just ends with one massive contradiction. No, it's literally like a point is made, and then within a few minutes, that point is contradicted. Like, hey, non-white people can still uphold white supremacy, but then this person, it's ridiculous to call this person a rape apologist because they're a survivor of rape.
Accusation, a couple dozen quote tweets saying things like, "I'm not even white," or "I'm so white," in an attempt, I guess, to prove that their actions don't uplift white supremacy. Sort of like if I actively campaigned in laws that restrict gay couples' rights to adopt, and then when accused of homophobia said, "I'm so straight." Like, nobody's innate identity dictates their morality or their actions. And of course, can someone back this up with a single piece of evidence? If you want more information, feel free to read White Tears, Brown Scars. If you're a white gender...
Oh, you mean White Tears, Brown Scars? The book that literally contradicted itself and was bad, a very bad book. I haven't read it, but it literally contradicts itself. You showed it contradicting itself. You chose, you've gone back to it several times. You were very reliant on it. So admittedly, you have posted quite a few quotes, but not that many quotes. And one of the quotes you chose literally contradicts its own point.
And a critical woman, you probably won't though, as I'm sure no amount of evidence will ever be enough for you, given that your entire idea...
No, well, certainly not one piece of evidence of Meghan Murphy, one gender critical person, doing one thing. Yeah, that's not going to be enough for me. I mean, maybe a little bit more evidence than that still might not be enough. You might have actually had to say, fill this 40 goddamn minutes with something a little bit more substantial than one time Meghan Murphy liked one tweet that was kind of dodgy. Yeah, you might have had to have done a little bit more than that. I'm not sure exactly how much it would take me to be convinced that the gender critical movement has a serious, irreparable, racism problem. Even then, you might notice that still wouldn't make it true that biological males can be women. It would just mean that, oh no, the gender critical movement has a problem. But, whatever. Even still, you didn't even get close to showing that. And I'm sad.
Ideology necessitates that the claims of women of color who disagree with you must be bullshit. If any gender critical women of color want to offer a counterpoint to the feminists of color that I've quoted, feel free to leave a message here. YouTube deletes most of my comments as controversial, so I wanted to make sure there was a place to send them where I could actually read them. This section could be
I mean, I do find that kind of funny because obviously, so complain to Caelan at gmail.com was a joke previously in the video where it was like a place where it was implied Caelan isn't actually going to read any of it. So it's literally Caelan dismissing women of color, saying, hey, if there's any women of color who would like to disagree with me and challenge me, I don't care, shut up. Like, that's what Caelan's saying. Lovely.
An entire video of its own, but I had to cut a lot out here. If you're interested in this...
I'm so angry. What is this? What is this? I don't understand. How? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What are you talking about? What do you mean you had to cut out some stuff? Caelan! You had one gender critical person liking one kind of dodgy tweet. That was the entirety of your evidence. Oh, apart from, I guess, maybe we're going to count a bunch of gender critical people argued with some black people one time. And now you're going to be like, oh, but I had loads of other points too. Okay, either they're just as bad as the majority of points in your video, in which case, yeah, I'm glad you didn't include them and, add that onto all the rest of the other points you were completely worthless. Or, alternatively, they were good points, in which case, you're an idiot for not including them. But I don't actually think you had any good points. But I don't know, it's just so weird. And these people do this a lot. They present, content that makes, no point, and then they say, oh, I had to edit so much stuff out. And it's like, I don't even know how to react to that.
Though, leave a comment in the C section, and maybe I'll elaborate on this at some point. There's also more here. I know there are gender critical people watching this, so even if you don't decide to stop your crusade against trans people, I hope you'll at least take the words of feminist women of color who aren't in your cult to heart.
Yeah, I took them to heart. I mean, to be fair, okay, I don't know, like, see, here's the thing. This video has essentially presented the central kind of source for, like, feminist women of color as being literally a complete idiot who contradicts their own point, and which was very sad. And then, apart from that, somebody who literally said that they are opposed to white women fighting for their rights. Oof. Okay, we're on the homophobia section. We're pretty close to the end, but we'll just get as far as we can. Actually, maybe I should record an outro. Okay, I'm going to record an outro now, but then we'll see how far we go. All right. So again, I would like to stress, because I know this confuses people, I am recording the outro because I want to get it out of the way so I don't forget it. But that doesn't mean I'm ending the stream right now. Okay? Right, everybody. So that's the end of the video. It wasn't good, and I'm shaken. I don't know how long it would take me to recover. Fortunately, I'm not actually streaming tomorrow. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because it's irrelevant because it's in the outro. If you would like to, I don't know, provide me some kind of compensation for the fact that I went through this video, please do like, share, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I also think, I mean, I don't know, Patreon would be nice considering what I go through. I don't know. It was bad. It's a bad video. It's got dumber. Like, the more it's tried to make actual kind of points, it's got worse. So apart from that, I'll just say big thank you to my current patrons. Usually I don't say big thank you to my current patrons. I'm breaking new ground. So we're on homophobia. Let's see how far we get.
Acknowledging that homosexual behaviour is a sinful act is not an act of abuse, and people who think it is don't grasp Christianity. They are cattle to our Hinduism at this point, glorified beyond their humanity in the media, to the point where it is a complete certainty that children are identifying as GLBT, far beyond any natural inclination that might exist, just because of the social prestige.
I want to see how far we get. So I don't think I'm going to have much to say about this, but I just want to see.
And the fact that said identification gives you an ironclad social shield. The physical reality.
Yeah, I'm guessing so based on the fact it mentions Hinduism.
Reality of male homosexuality has been whitewashed to the point where no one can even speak about the very real medical facts at play. For instance, in their rates of serious STDs, the social realities, well, that's another can of worms. The egregious and disgusting sexual behaviour of homosexual...
Yeah, I suppose I should point... So we're on the homophobia section now, and somebody's pointing out that denying same-sex attraction is homophobia. Like, it is the TRAs who are homophobic, not the gender-critical people. This section on homophobia is very short. It's literally just random quotes from random people, which I'm not going to respond to because it's kind of just irrelevant. It's like, the thing is, in most cases, like in the previous comments, there have been things that I could like defend. In this case, not really. I can't really defend any of this, but my suspicion is that's because this is just random kind of crazy people. And like people who are, of course, not representative of the gender critical movement at all. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really care to respond to any of this.
Sexual males resulted in the deaths of thousands of innocent haemophiliacs and trauma victims. I mean, partying all night with 10 different men in your anus is no one else's business until you stop at the blood bank on the way home in the morning.
We've already fairly thoroughly documented the amount of straight up homophobia and homophobic talking points they espouse.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we've already had kind of a section on this where I've already responded to it. So, you know, check that out. But yeah, so that's why I guess we're just on random quotes from random people who I've never heard of.
But that was just mostly thought leaders. Maybe the people in the groups don't share the same mentality at all.
I mean, if anything, like it's the opposite. The claims from like actual people who are at the forefront of this are entirely affirming of gay relationships. But maybe I could entertain the idea that there are some random people on random Facebook groups who might be homophobic, because you've got a much wider kind of pool of people there. And of course, you're going to be able to find some homophobic people. That's irrelevant. Like, that's the thing. I like how this is being presented as like a way of saying, Like, as if this is going to be more substantial, as if it's like, hey, if you can find random people on Facebook groups, maybe that will be something significant. And of course it won't be. It's irrelevant.
Well, it's unlikely, given that they do warn you if you don't like homophobia, some gender critical groups might upset you, as we talked about earlier.
Well, can we just point out, that group was created in response to a post you made where you were homophobic, and then all of the people on, like, this is the, remember, this was the story. Caelan Conrad posted on a gender critical parents group and said homophobic stuff. Then Caelan was dragged by the majority of the group for being homophobic, which resulted in somebody creating a group just so that gender critical people could talk about their gender critical points without worrying that their other beliefs, which might be wildly against the mainstream consensus, such as the anti-homophobia consensus of the wider gender critical movement, would not get in the way of them kind of, otherwise being able to engage in the discourse. That's what happened. Do you think, I mean, I know you made this series very long. Was that because you wanted us to forget how the series literally started? Because I didn't forget. I do remember that.
Examples of this very casual but blatant homophobia would be gender critical activists saying things like this.
Gay men should not be given children.
Or this.
I have a big problem with gay men adopting kids. I'm not an authority and I can't stop it, but if you ask me, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
Only pro-LGB organization they support is, of course, the LGB Alliance, which is actually just a front for disseminating anti-trans gender critical propaganda. Leaders of the organization have come out.
Well, again, let me be clear on this. TRA, the trans identity movement, is inherently homophobic. So therefore, if all the LGB Alliance did was oppose trans identity, if the LGB Alliance was purely an anti-trans movement, that would be more than enough to make their name valid and accurate as a description of them. Like, that's the thing. People always say, oh, the LGBT Alliance doesn't actually do things for lesbians, gays, and bisexuals. All they do is attack trans identity. And it's like, by attacking trans identity, they are doing a huge amount for lesbians, gays, and bisexuals. So I'm fine with that. If somebody, like, I really want to have that kind of, like, meme of, like, like the we know meme where it's like, you're just attacking trans identity. It's like, we know, because, yeah, that's a fine thing for them to be doing.
Out against banning conversion therapy for LGBT people, as well as...
Wait, let me look at that. Wait, let me check. Okay, so this is apparently...
Against banning conversion therapy.
Conversion therapy is one of the many terms given a confusing new meaning by gender identity campaigners. The aim of this ban to compel or intimidate psychotherapists into going along with the affirmative approach to gender dysphoria. So this is not against, like, literally just a misrepresentation. This is not against banning conversion therapy for LGBT people. It's against banning conversion therapy for trans identity. So there we go. Just literal lies. No, shameless lies.
Therapy for LGBT people, as well as have actively shown themselves to be ignorant and hostile towards the importance of gay rights.
To those people saying it's homophobic not to be in favor of gay marriage, have a look at the statistics. It seems it's rather a small minority who have had made their wedding vows. So here's the thing, this is a misunderstanding. I covered this at the time. I've got a video on this called Owen Jones Slanders the LGBT Alliance. Basically, all the LGBT Alliance was saying is that they weren't talking about gay marriage as a legal right. They were talking about the idea of gay marriage as some kind of aspiration for gay relationships. The point they were making is many gay people in gay relationships don't want to get married, and in that sense they are not in favor of gay marriage. It's essentially a dispute about whether or not it's gay people should want to get married. That's the question. So that's what they were saying. It's a really simple point, and it's not hard to understand. And literally they say that have a look at the statistics. It seems rather a small minority who have made their wedding vows. So the point they're making is, look, most lesbians, gays, and bisexuals haven't actually got married. So being against gay marriage, not in the sense of thinking it should be illegal, but in the sense of thinking it's not necessarily the right decision for lesbians, gays, and bisexuals to kind of, I guess, make a commitment in their relationship, is an entirely defensible thing. Now, I personally would like to say I would love to see lesbians, gays, and bisexuals get married because I'm a Christian. I think that monogamous marriage is good, and I would like to see people make that commitment. But whatever, I can understand that there are many lesbians, gays, and bisexuals who don't feel the need to get married, and that's their choice. And I wouldn't say that they are homophobic because they don't think that marriage is something that they are in favor of.
Calling into question whether LGBT people even need to have equal rights, like
What are you implying, Lisa Michelle, that I talk too much? I should actually stop now. I should stop. It would be nice for me to stop once in my life before my camera runs out of battery. But it's probably so close. Should we stop now? It's going to run out of battery before I even finish saying goodbye. It's definitely going to stop. Like, it's so close to stopping.
same-sex marriage, or calling bisexual people straight.
Okay, you know what? Screw it. Okay, we're not going to do that. So, everybody, we are going to end this now. And that's because it's all Lisa Michelle's fault. She made me feel, I don't think she even meant it in a judgmental way, but I interpreted it as judgment. It's like, I need one of Caelan Conrad's kind of voiceover people to come along and read it in a kind of in like a unsympathetic way. OMG, I took a nap and you're still going. Is that good? That's how it'd be read. And I'd go, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it offended you so much. Yes, to answer your question, he is calling LGBT Alliance homophobic. But anyway, if you would like to see me talk about other stuff, maybe you should check out my video, Owen Jones Slanders the LGBT Alliance. Owen Jones Slanders LGBT Alliance. There you go, everybody. So we are done. Oh, so it gets sent by Restream.io. Oh, I know why. That's because it gets sent to. So if I just sent it to the YouTube chat, it would just be sent to you chat, whatever. Anyway, all right. So I am going. Thank you for coming here today to watch me do this thing that I do. I won't be here tomorrow. I will be here Monday. I won't be here Tuesday. I will be here Wednesday. I know that. I can foresee that. All right, bye. I feel like I should wait for at least one person to say bye, because it always feels rude to say bye and then not actually, and just like bye and then not even wait for people to say bye. Why are we here? Just to suffer? What's that? Every day I feel the spot where my arm used to be or something like that. I don't know. It's just like that meme thing. Bye. I've also... I was about to say, I also have just become aware that I feel like I've been holding in burps that whole time, kind of subconsciously.